Everyone around was discussing the girl, that once a prince had chased her, and now she was being matched with another man. Everyone said that he had a divine appearance. Someone even thought that this villainess could threaten him. It was Yvonne, the family's youngest daughter, a mage and a notorious villain. The man of Yells, Duke of the Northern Lands of Yells, asked the girl if she felt uncomfortable. She denied it, even though she felt her heart beating too hard at how amazing he was. She felt terribly awkward saying this on their first meeting, but she had to borrow money from him. The girl always wanted to become a villain rather than the main character of the novel. Even if she was scolded and pointed at, she would still remain a villain born into a rich family. She didn't want to have a life full of troubles and tactful people, where she would eventually die in a very miserable way, being hit by a bus. The heroine was distracted from these thoughts by a maid who asked where her appetite had gone. The heroine herself did not understand how one could lose one's appetite with such a luxurious breakfast. She began to live the life she dreamed of, reincarnated into the body of the novel's rich villain. It was a fantasy novel called Cordelia's Light, where she was a cruel and immoral villain. The girl in this novel learned about the engagement of her beloved Adrian to the main character of the novel, Cordelia. She made a contract with the devil and gained the power of darkness. The magician, Yvonne, became even stronger thanks to the demonic power. She turned into a great dark magician and tormented the main characters. She eventually met her end, dying a tragic death, but the heroine could not allow such an ending. The girl always envied Yvonne. She was the Duke's youngest daughter. Her family owned a nut mine and several gem mines. Her father was the owner of a magic tower, because over the long history of the family, many magicians were noted in the lineage. Plus, Yvonne had those abs, just the perfect figure. She also had unique beauty and the ability to use magic. In her past life, the girl was an orphan, lived in the slums, and worked endless hours at night. Compared to this, Yvonne's life seemed too much. But from that moment on, her main goal was to be happy for the two main characters and their happy ending. If only she could get past this mine in the form of the main characters, Yvonne would never have become a dark magician. Suddenly the Duke entered the room and said that he was giving her a trial period. He thought that she had not repented at all, and decided to find out what she was up to again. Before the girl got into Yvonne's body, she did something terrible, threw a bomb at the place where the main characters were having a date. There were no casualties, but it would have been better if she had overpaid for throwing the bomb before she did it. So, as soon as she got here, she received a punishment, which was that she had to sit in her room without going out. The heroine apologized and said that she would behave quietly and think about her actions. Suddenly the voice of the adjutant was heard, who told the Duke to give Yvonne the task of dealing with those documents. On the other hand, the adjutant thought it would be too difficult for the lady, but the Duke insisted. The girl still didn't understand how many documents were there. The Duke gave her only a week to do the job, and if she ran away this time, he would cut her out of the family tree. When her father left, the heroine was only glad that she finally had a family. On the first day she came into this world, her father called her crazy and she felt like he hated her. A man asked the dark-haired guy what documents he was reading, and he replied that they were just lying in a desk drawer. He explained that his father was worried until the end that he could not repay this debt. He even wrote in his will that he would strictly fulfill his request if he returned. The guy thought that there was no point in worrying about something that hadn't even happened yet. At this time, the Duke could not believe, holding the sheets of paper in his hands, how Yvonne could come up with such an amazing idea. The method of organizing square tables was a real reform for him. The Duke had thought all this time that she wouldn't like working with paperwork. Finally, they called the best servant, Yvonne, who now came to the Duke's office. He asked her if she had noticed anything strange in Yvonne's behavior lately. The maid admitted that she would also like to talk to the Duke about this. She said that after the Duke had given the lady a punishment, she became very depressed, and the Duke was surprised by this. He was also told that she began to eat less, about half the usual amount. In addition, she heard from the other maids that the mistress had tidied up the desk in the office. The man could not understand why his daughter's behavior had changed so suddenly. He thought it might be because of the prince. His open refusal must have shocked her. He thought that Yvonne still couldn't forget the prince. The heroine herself at that moment did not think that her Excel skills could be useful. She wanted every day to be as calm. She could just relax and eat sweets. The Duke at that moment remembered how much his daughter was in love with Prince Adrian. He didn't understand what he was missing, because Yvonne was easygoing, active, and had a beautiful appearance. And it was as if he deliberately, so demonstratively went on a date with the illegitimate daughter of the ruler of the kingdom of the world. The Duke got angry and hit the table. He understood Yvonne. His daughter came up to him and asked worriedly what was the matter. She didn't understand. Maybe there was some problem with those documents. But the man said that everything was just wonderful, and both he and the adjutant were completely shocked by her work. She smiled and thanked him for the praise. The girl honestly admitted that she didn't think he would praise her. The heroine, in turn, apologized for causing so much trouble to their family and promised to behave more carefully in the future, but the Duke only shouted out why she was so panicked, because there were no flaws in her. He said that he himself had punished her so that she would improve, but seeing her in such a state, his heart was uneasy. The man said he bought a house where she could smash everything to make herself calmer. The girl was extremely surprised, and she did not understand why she had to destroy the house. The adjutant explained that the Duke had installed a shield near the house, and she could not only use magic, but also detonate bombs. But the girl did not understand why they should destroy the house if she had dreamed of having her own house all her life. The heroine said that she wouldn't have to destroy the house this time. The man was very angry at the prince at that moment. He did not understand how he could bring her to such a state. The girl was already beginning to think that her father was softer in character than he seemed. At this time, the Duke began to say that if she wanted a romantic relationship, there were only men much more worthy than the prince. The girl, in turn, said that she would really like to study, and this made everyone surprised. After the reincarnation, the heroine did not know much about this life. She would like to learn everything. And since Yvonne was also a mage, that meant she could control magic, just like her father. It was very strange, but for some reason she couldn't master the books on magic. She decided to try what is usually shouted in cartoons or novels when magic is released. She pointed her hand at the door and screamed, but at that moment someone came in. It was Yvonne's brother, Barden. He said that her words made him shudder, but the guy didn't understand what was happening. He thought she was studying to replace the little Duke. The heroine got angry and said that she just wanted to help her family and brother. She said that before, monsters appeared once every 10 years, but now this period is becoming shorter and shorter. It was obvious that the next war would be even larger and would most likely happen in about 3 years. Besides, the girl said that she had been studying history all day today. The brother was indignant, as Yvonne herself found out, and even collected the data in a table. The girl was grumbling at this time and saying that he thought she was just going to get the title, but her brother really didn't know what she was really after, because she wasn't the type to just help him out. She admitted that in fact it was very difficult for her. She wanted to help her brother and father and live a quiet life. But he was only more surprised because he did not recognize his sister. He thought she was crazy and really was mad. A little later, he came to his father and said that Yvonne was somehow strange. He shared that she called him brother, and his father said that she told him he was amazing. The brother told how his sister said that it was hard for her, and now she wants to live a quiet life. The father just sighed. He told his son how today the teachers who came to Yvonne said that her thirst for knowledge was commendable. However, in his eyes, her gaze was full of madness. That's why he wanted to introduce Yvonne to a man with whom the prince could not be compared. His son supported his idea and said that it would still be better than sitting at home all the time. Yvonne was still very young, but she could be allowed to go on a date. At this time, the dark-haired guy told Aunt to prepare everything for the trip. He finally had a reason to go to the capital. The previous Duke once took part in a fight against monsters, trusting only his sword, but during the battle he found himself trapped in flames. At that time, the Kaiser was passing by, heading north to get medicine for his sick wife. The great magician Kaiser helped the Duke in that dangerous situation, thus the Yells family found themselves in great debt. On the one hand, the father was grateful for the rescue but asked not to smooth over the fact that the magician helped him get rid of danger. Now, thanks to one letter, the forgotten oath has made itself known again. The clerk asked the boy if he really intended to go there. He explained that he would need to meet with his daughter to repay the debt. But the employee still didn't understand how he would date her if she had done so much in her life. The guy stopped all this talk and said that he would definitely pay back his debt to their family and that the time had simply come for it. The employee finally gave in and admitted that he could not overcome his stubbornness. The guy himself began to wonder how terrible a person the Duke's daughter was. At that moment, the lady herself was called out. She didn't understand why everyone thought she was a true demon, even though she assumed everything was bad. The brother from the carriage told her that they were all still afraid of her because her reputation was still strong. When they arrived in the city, the girl was surprised, but her brother did not understand why she was surprised. Yvonne threw a bomb into this peaceful place once. The brother leaned over to Yvonne and said that if she wanted to blow something up, she would just have to tell him. She realized that this was the imperial palace in front of her, and it was much more beautiful than she had imagined. The father opened his cloak and told his daughter not to even look in that direction now. The girl couldn't understand how they still thought she was in love with the prince. She shouted after them that she had already forgotten about the prince, but they did not believe her. They were already welcomed into the best atelier in the empire. They had a completely different reaction compared to when Yvonne came here alone. When she arrived alone, the workers didn't say a word to her. A lonely and abandoned daughter, that's exactly what she was. Suddenly her father called out to her and told the servants to pick out suitable clothes for her. The girl thought that they had dragged her here on purpose to cheer her up. It was amazing to her that she now had a family that cared for her. She tried on a bunch of different outfits, and her father and brother advised her to wear some specific ones. Her brother told her to try on a few more things that seemed good to him. The father admitted that when Yvonne smiles like that, she reminds him of his wife. At that moment, the brother suggested that they go have some tea. The girl thought that they had staged all this on purpose because they spoke unnaturally. When they were already sitting in the cafe, the girl said that she was going to study in order to be useful to them. When she said that she had nowhere to wear these outfits anyway, her brother said that her father would introduce her to a good man. It turns out that he wasn't joking last time because the meeting was supposed to take place in 3 days in this cafe. They said that this man's name was Rodnine Yelis, the young head of the Yelis family, one of the respected families of the empire. The girl realized that she had already heard something about him. Everyone said that he was handsome, a gentleman, and a well-rounded person. She asked her brother and father why such a man needed her then. But her father said that he would need her because she was not a villain at all. But her brother insisted that she was a perfectly decent girl. The heroine thought that those people who were now protecting her seemed to really be her family. After some time, her father left for the tower, and Barton had some business. They were both so busy, but he still found time for her. At that moment, the girl approached her father's servant and said that he had something on his hand. She slapped his hand, saying it was a wasp, and the boy fell to the floor in confusion. Suddenly, she saw some dark, energetic shadow behind her. She didn't understand what it was and even jumped from it. The heroine turned to the guy and asked if he saw the same thing she saw. After some time, 2 travelers talked about how this place was a joint effort of the Imperial and other clans. Prince Adrian said he had heard that young Gels was going to visit the capital for the first time. The guy said that it seemed that this news had already reached the prince himself. The prince asked Barton. It was rumored that the girl was now studying history, etiquette, and even communication skills. He understood that she was trying to supposedly take the place of the princess, but he intended to make Princess Cardelia his wife. Barton explained that His Highness was trying in vain because his sister had long forgotten about him and started a new life. The prince asked him not to pretend because the lady could not forget him so easily, and he himself knew this very well. Barton thought that if it weren't for his title, he would have killed him long ago. Suddenly he noticed some kind of mark on a tree and said that he would need to write it down. But my brother just heard him and said that there was some strange trace behind him. The prince asked the boy to stop avoiding conversations and to listen to his advice about Yvonne. But his brother interrupted him and said that Yvonne had really already forgotten him. After that, he turned around and left, although during the war, he considered the prince to be quite good. Barton knew his sister had no idea about men. At this time, a girl was wiping blood from her mouth. She assumed that someone had killed his evil spirit with one kick. At this time, Yvonne gave the fabric to her maid, and she was very happy. She was surprised that the maid was so happy with a few strips of lace, and she, in turn, did not understand why her mistress immediately sat down to read books as soon as she returned. In fact, the heroine needed information about the monsters associated with the shadow, but somehow it was not visible. At this moment, the heroine called out to her maid. She asked her what she had touched. The maid revealed that it was the right drawer of the desk in the artifact lab, which is the bomb-making room. The heroine explained that she simply asked her. The maid said that if she found that someone had broken in, she would immediately throw the bomb that was in the earring. One time she was going to break in there and thought that the laboratory would be dark and boring. But here everything was different. She saw the table that Carol had told her about. She saw a hardcover diary and one book there. First, she needed to look at the diary, which she had to open first. She thought that with Yvonne's strength she could do it, but he wouldn't open. Then the girl noticed a book, and in it she read that Yvonne had magical memory loss. She realized that she couldn't use magic not because she wasn't the real Yvonne, but because she was sick. At this time, the guy was getting dressed, and his employees said that it looked like these clothes were specially made for him. The guy finally finished the fitting. He told his employee that monsters had been appearing too often lately. At this time, the maid was combing our heroine's hair and said that she looked somehow pale, as if she had not slept well. The girl told her maid that she wanted to buy something and needed to look at the list of her belongings. The heroine realized that the rich man's daughter didn't have a penny to her name. She knew that if it turned out in a dangerous situation that she couldn't use magic, it would be very bad. She told Carol that she didn't care what decorations she hung, she had to quickly pick out and prepare the magic ball. The maid also complimented her, saying that she looked very beautiful with any jewelry. The girl contacted the company and found out if there was any cheap teals by any chance. Apparently, it was difficult to get even with money. The girl looked at the cup and thought how expensive it was. The heroine thought that if she sold the clothes, she would get a lot of money, but still, teals was worth 200 million gold. Suddenly, she was called out to in the cafe, and she said that she was thinking about literally nothing. She already knew that the guy would be cute, but she didn't think that he would be so handsome. She would even like to be the first to ask him out on a second date, but now was not the time for that. The girl apologized for saying this on their first date and asked him to lend her some money. She thought that after such words he would lose the power of speech and quickly leave this place. She wanted him to chuckle or just walk away, but instead he asked her how much she wanted. The girl said she needed about 200 million gold, and the guy reached into his pocket. He took out a pen and she thought he was going to kill her with this sharp object, but instead he started writing something. She didn't understand what he was writing with his beautiful hands. But then she realized it and was shocked that he was actually going to lend her money. She said he was very kind, and she had heard what a fair person he was. But it was still not possible to lend money so easily. He said that she herself knows about her situation. The guy smiled and said that even if she deceived him, he couldn't do anything about it. The girl said that it would be right to run away immediately because the lady on the date was behaving very strangely. The Duke leaned over to her instead and said that he didn't think she was strange at all, so there was no need to run. The girl just sighed heavily and said that she thought it would be better for them to say goodbye here. The guy asked her if she could fulfill one of his requests in that case. He suggested that next time we met we call each other by our first names, and he told her to call him Rodnane henceforth and to kiss her hand. Sometime later, the girl sat by the fountain and thought that her heart would jump out of her chest, and she was unworthy of such a man. But suddenly the prince came up to her and extended his hand. He said that she is very persistent, and once on the day of her date she also stalks him. The prince's real mother died, so he was adopted by the current empress, thus becoming her heir. He always cared about his reputation, so he disliked Yvonne. If any of his clothes or accessories were a color that reminded him of Yvonne, he pointedly avoided them. The guy straightened his hair and said that Yvonne was suffering a lot because of him. As befits the main character of the novel, he could of course be called handsome, but after that ideal man, the prince seemed somehow ordinary. The prince said that she shouldn't look at him with such a sad look, but the heroine apologized and walked away from him. He tried to stop her by grabbing her hand. She smiled in surprise and told him that he was holding her hand right now. The girl explained that if he held her hand, it would harm his reputation. She decided to tell him straight out that she had forgotten about him a long time ago. He could now rest easy because she was not going to bother him anymore. The prince said that he knew how she began to study to become his wife. She said that it was not like that at all, but secretly she was angry with him because this psycho couldn't understand her. The girl even clenched her fists, trying to explain to him that she no longer felt anything for him. But at that moment the Duke came up to her and threw his cloak over her shoulders. The prince was very surprised by this. He recognized him as the Duke of Yales. Everyone present in the courtyard could not understand this scene. They thought that a love triangle was emerging. At that moment, the girl was only thinking about the fact that she should take her brother's artifact. The Duke explained that he had a gift for her that he had not yet had time to give. He said that this was not the most suitable place and suggested that she retire to some quiet place. The girl thought that he realized that she was in an unpleasant situation and decided to help her. She quickly grabbed his hand, turned to the prince, and said that she actually had a date here. He placed his hand on her hand and told the prince that they would see each other some other time. As soon as they had left, she thanked the Duke and said that someday she would repay him with kindness too. The heroine admitted that she knew that he came on a date at the request of her father, and it probably wasn't easy to do. She didn't even think that he might feel uncomfortable, but instead, the Duke came closer to her and leaned over the girl. He reached out and adjusted her hair, tucking it behind her ear. He said they had actually agreed that she would call him Rodnane. A little later in his room, he thought that this villainess had clear eyes. He turned to the servant and asked if he really had a handsome appearance. The servant said that he was handsome now and would always be handsome. But the Duke did not understand how one could believe this. Perhaps his criteria of beauty differed from the standard ones. It seemed to him that the girl was looking at him as if he were a stone. He still heard the sound of a bell, as if the lady were calling his name. He was in complete confusion. The servant just laughed and asked if he had given the gift he had intended. But the guy realized that apparently he didn't do it. After the lady left, he realized that he had not given the gift, so he followed her and saw her crying. He thought that it must have been hard for the lady to see the prince she had loved for so long. He sighed heavily and told his servant that he would remain in the capital for now. He also asked to find out if the lady had any large debts. It was strange for the Duke that she asked for exactly 200 million, since their family was considered one of the richest in the world. He didn't know why she would need such a sum. It wasn't like her. The guy noted that the sunset looked like the lady's eyes, reminiscent of a precious stone. When the girl opened the box, she saw taels. There was at least 20 grams here, if you translate it into money. 200 million gold. In her eyes, Rodnane looked like an ideal man. At that moment, her brother and father ran into her room. They asked if it was true that she had met a prince on a date. The girl thought that their faces looked as if they had worked in a factory for many days and nights. The girl did not understand why she told them the whole truth, because now they would worry about her even more. Her father said that it was he who sent her on this date, and it was because of him that she ran into the prince. The girl said the opposite, that she felt uncomfortable because the Duke had to go on a date with someone like her. The Duke's soul ached from such words. At that moment, her father said that she was very smart and beautiful, and he was proud to have such a daughter. The girl smiled happily and said that she had decided to forget about everything that had happened and start her own business. She thought that now she needed a huge capital. The girl resolutely asked her father if he could lend her 10 million gold coins so that she could pay them back with interest. The brother said that this price was only for a few outfits, so he would give them to her for free. His sister said that she did not want to do this, but wanted to write an official promissory note and take the debt from her father, which she would definitely repay. The father explained that he agreed, because they were not only a clan of magicians but also the owners of the house company. A little later, the father told his son that over time, Yvonne was becoming more and more like her mother. His son said that although Yvonne said that she had forgotten the prince, a person's feelings do not go away so easily. The father was very angry with the prince at this time. Although Hadrian was the heir to the throne, he did not yet have strong power. The son was surprised how his father wanted to influence the choice of the heir. Father said that if Adrian was no longer the crown prince, he would no longer be able to look down on their family. The brother guessed that the girl's prince's healing skill, which she used to save the prince on the battlefield, was beyond the normal level. The next day, the girls brought envelopes with letters. The maid said that these letters were sent by Duke Yales and the crown prince. The girl already thought that the first was with a complaint, and the second with a summons. She thought he might be unhappy about dating her, and the prince probably sent an arrest warrant for that bomb incident. The maid was watching her violent reaction at that moment. She told her mistress that she was now leading a quiet life, as if she had gone into a monastery. The girl laughed. Where had anyone ever seen a monastery that was so good? She didn't know what to do if this really turned out to be a letter of complaint or a demand to return the bracelet from Thiels. The Duke was so caring and gentle that day. She read that he really enjoyed their date yesterday and was worried about whether she liked the gift. He wrote that if she had time, she was to go to the opera with him. The girl couldn't believe how he invited her on a second date. She said she urgently needed to send the refusal. She thought that the Duke had sent the letter out of politeness, as he had come to the meeting at his father's request. She was, of course, sorry to give up such a man, but she could do nothing about it. She didn't even want to open the letter from the prince. It spoke of an invitation to a tea party that Cordelia was hosting, and at the same time a threat to make her promise not to use magic. She told him that she had forgotten him, and now he suddenly felt sorry. She told Carol to bring her some writing paper urgently so she could write a reply. After some time, this place was called the Green Palace. The summer flowers looked very bright and fresh. The prince realized that she really had not come, and that earlier she had tried by any means to get an invitation if she knew that he would be there. He didn't understand. Wasn't she saying those words to arouse his interest? The prince at the table explained that it was dangerous on the battlefield then, and Cordelia saved his life. In turn, Cordelia thanked everyone present. A small rumor immediately began to circulate that the Duke of Yales was on an official date with a lady. Rumors reached the prince that the Duke was still in the capital. Cordelia suddenly spoke up after seeing the prince's reaction and said that both girls had such beautiful skin. At the same time, Yvonne was studying a brilliant product that was inexpensive, so she could buy the rights to it with her father's money. It was the herb rhodium, which is commonly used as a fever reducer, but is not a good remedy due to the availability of more effective drugs. According to the plot, when Adrian and Cordelia returned to the capital, an unknown skin disease appeared among the aristocrats. Cordelia, who was an illegitimate child, was not accepted in high circles, but she found a way to cure this disease, thereby changing the attitude towards herself. It turned out that the remedy was precisely the herb rhodium. Cordelia gave this herb to everyone for free, but the heroine had no such desire. Since she was involved in the novel's plot, it was necessary to use all the information she had. She thought that the grass could be sold immediately, but if she wanted to sell it at a high price, it was important to think about a few more things. The product she planned had to look high quality. It had to be natural cosmetics handmade. Today she needed to find a place for the store and quickly start production before the disease spread. As soon as she got out of the carriage, it was as if some dust had gotten into her eyes. Suddenly, a familiar voice called out to her, and it was Mr. Rodnane. She did not understand what brought him here. He seemed simply incomparable to her, as if he was glowing all over. Even his cold gaze was attractive. It was a deadly beauty. The Duke said that she had rejected him, but he was very glad that they had met by chance. Her conscience tormented her greatly, but she lied, looking into those beautiful eyes. The guy said that he was just about to go for a walk and wanted to invite her to go for a walk with him. None of those present understood why they were together. In the novel, Duke Yales hardly appeared, only mentioned as the owner of the northern lands, and this Duke suddenly goes on a date with Yvonne, who has fallen ill with a strange, rare disease. There were too many contradictions in the novel. It could have been simple courtesy, but there was nothing wrong with caution. She said that it would be better for her to go for a walk with someone who knew the capital well. The Duke became very sad, but he stepped towards her and asked her to simply let him. Eventually they went somewhere together. She sent the accompanying knight to rest somewhere. It was dangerous for her to walk alone now, but suddenly she would get into even greater danger. Even the Duke asked why she was accompanied by a knight, and she said it was simply for safety. On the other hand, Yvonne was a mage who didn't need a knight. She wondered why he was asking obvious things, but for Yvonne it was far from obvious. She whispered that it never hurt to be careful. She realized that she urgently needed to change the subject of conversation, and asked him if he minded if she went shopping. At some point, the heroine even felt as if she were undergoing some kind of interrogation. But when the guy found out that she didn't like the dress, bags, shoes, and jewelry, he was confused. The Duke said that in that case he should have found out in advance what to give her. The girl decided to rectify the situation and said that she really liked his gift. After a short silence, the Duke began asking her many questions, as if nothing had happened, as if he was trying to find out everything about her at once. But it didn't end there, because the guy told her that today she looked even more beautiful than yesterday. She said that she needed to agree and move on to the next topic, but suddenly someone called out to the Duke. It was some girls who were now shouting to them from afar. One of the women introduced herself as the wife of Viscount Fiancé and introduced her daughter. The guy quickly replied that he was glad to see them now, but he was very busy and had to go. The girl thought that he had just behaved so coldly and strangely. She thought that he was kind to everyone. At some point, the girl even thought that he was interested in her, since he was asking so many questions. But she had just seen the coat of arms of the Yales family and remembered that the Duke had another reason for treating her like that. She studied the history of the imperial family in class. The secret investigative organization of the imperial family, since an official investigation was impossible, they acted secretly. Nobody has even seen them in real life. However, if the Yales family is responsible for the secret investigation of the imperial family, then everything falls into place. She knew that his father had asked him out on a date, but she couldn't say what had caused his behavior after the date. She tried to remember that in the novel, Yvonne became increasingly cruel, so the prince secretly followed her. That is, Yales could have been a spy sent by the prince to keep an eye on her. Suddenly, the guy grabbed her and told her to look around when she walked down the street. He explained that she almost crashed into a tree, and the girl realized that he was being so kind to her on purpose to lull her vigilance. It was even better that way, but she was going to show him that she did not pose a danger to Adrian. After some time, they reached a certain place, and the Duke said that she looked beautiful even without makeup. And the girl thought that everything was not so good now when they entered the beauty salon. This store mostly sold brightly colored cosmetics, so she thought she should try another one. She explained to the Duke that they didn't have what she needed, and asked him to go with her to another store. At another store, they were greeted by a female receptionist. The heroine was surprised that they were immediately recognized. The hostess had a good understanding of representatives of high society. Suddenly, she smelled some kind of aroma and said that it seemed like she was using some herbs in her cosmetics. The girl realized that functional cosmetics have amazing properties thanks to herbs. The owner seemed to be really proud of her products and also liked the smell and texture. The heroine thought that here, she could make the cosmetics she needed using the rhodium herb. She also remembered that the Duke had given her a bracelet, but she had given him nothing. She called out to the guy and he immediately came up to her. She thought that she shouldn't think like that, but he looks like an obedient dog. The heroine asked for the Duke's hand and began to rub the cream into his skin. Perhaps such thoughts were unworthy, but let the one who looks at this hand and does not think that he is powerful throw a stone at her. At some point the guy pulled back, and it seemed to her that she had behaved too rudely. She said she just wanted to thank him for the gift, but it would be wrong to offer hand cream to a man who often handles a sword. The girl screamed that it was stupid and ran out of the store. At this time, everyone in the palace was discussing the fact that the lady was on a date with the Duke again. The prince said that the event was over and they were still not leaving, and he became curious about what they were talking about. One of the ladies said that they were not talking about anything special, they were just discussing the Duke of Yales and Miss Yvonne. The prince at that moment thought that the lady was trying to make him jealous. It was surprising that this villainess turned out to be attractive to him. This time she tried her best. The prince's girlfriend at that moment was thinking only about the fact that he rejected Yvonne because he didn't like her. However, his facial expressions and actions spoke of obvious jealousy. She realized that she needed to get his attention back. Suddenly, she bequeathed Barden. During the war, she managed to gain the favor of those around her with the help of healing magic. The only one who did not succumb to her charm was Duke Barden. She thought that perhaps she could use it to regain the prince's interest in her. She didn't feel any animosity towards Barden, but she had no other choice. At this time, the Duke thanked the lady for giving him the cream. The girl thought they had spent quite a bit of time together, and she thought she had proven she was not a threat. Suddenly, her brother appeared between them and blocked the way to the Duke. He explained that rumors about her date with the Duke had reached not only the Academy, but also the Imperial Palace. Her brother bowed before the Duke and introduced himself. The Duke at that moment said that he was very pleased and shook her brother's hand. He said that he and Yvonne were very similar, and from what he had heard, her brother was a real handsome man. The heroine thought that he even charmed Barden. He seemed to be kind to everyone regardless of gender. The Duke said he was very keen to meet them, and if they didn't mind, he would like to invite him and Lady Yvonne to dinner. However, her brother said that this was impossible. The guy said that his sister has been trying to start a new life lately, so there is no point in giving her empty hopes just out of curiosity. The sister realized that her brother was watching her so that she would not fall in love with the Duke and cause a stir again. Her brother explained that she had now decided to devote time not to dating, but to self-development. Yvonne thought that was right, except that the Duke was following her on the prince's orders and not trying to charm her. She noticed that the Duke had a puzzled expression. Barden was talking nonsense and she felt ashamed. The girl followed her brother, thanking the Duke at the end. The servant told him a little later that he had completed the investigation into Lady Yvonne's financial condition that he had requested. The clerk said she had no debts and had not lent money to anyone. Everything was crystal clear. The Duke, in turn, asked the servant how one could confess his feelings to a girl who needed nothing. The employee assumed that if she didn't need anything, then that meant a refusal. In other words, the game was over, and he was rejected. The Duke told how she gave him a gift, and the servant hissed and said that she had put a wall between them, but at the same time gave him hope. He called her a villain, and the Duke asked him not to talk about her like that anymore. The clerk admitted that he thought the Duke was just another fish in the aquarium for the girl. This meant that the person continued to meet with the admirer, although he had no intention of developing this relationship. The Duke thought sadly that if this was Yvonne's aquarium, it was quite good. But being in such an aquarium made no sense, because of this terrible prince, Yvonne does not allow anyone to be near her. First, he thought he should get her attention. First of all, he needed to deal with the prince, and he gave the task to an employee to send him a letter. Upon arriving home, the heroine's brother asked her if she had any feelings for him. She, in turn, tried to say that she had no feelings for the Duke. Then the girl smiled and said that it was her brother who was charmed when he met her. A little later, in his bath, her brother was already thinking that he was really worried about her, and she was joking about it. She suffered so much because of the prince that he could not allow this to happen. He also remembered the prince's words in the garden that the lady could not forget him so easily, and if he had not been the crown prince, he would have killed him in the garden. The young man immediately remembered that on that day in the garden he had recorded a strange imprint. He took the bracelet that belonged to his sister, and suddenly some kind of monster appeared behind him, similar to a sarkin. The guy saw this monster and couldn't understand what it was. He immediately tried to use magic against him. This black haze was like dark magic. Someone sent this monster. The guards should have come running here a long time ago, but for some reason they weren't there, which means the connection with the outside world was broken with the help of magic. At this time, our heroine heard something and asked the maid. She ran out of her room into the corridor and asked the maid again if she heard anything. She realized that the sounds were coming from a certain room, and the maid rushed after her. She looked into Barden's room to make sure he was okay. The next moment, the heroine was already shouting to her servant Carol to call people here. She clearly heard some kind of roar and the words of a spell. In the room itself, she saw her brother desperately fighting a giant centipede. She shouted at him, trying to find out what was going on. The brother looked back at his sister and asked her what she was doing there at that moment, and asked her to hit the monster with magic. But now she couldn't use any magic, and so the next moment the poison of this monster flew at her. However, her brother arrived in time and placed a shield on her. He himself only managed to jump away from the monster to avoid getting hurt. The girl wanted to do something, but her body did not obey her. At this time, her brother could not understand why Yvonne panicked and did nothing. Surely it was the first time she saw such a monster in his thoughts, and naturally she was confused in such a situation. He thought that he himself almost lost consciousness when he first saw such a monster. But he understood perfectly well that he could not cope with it without her help, and asked his sister to pull herself together. The next moment, her brother could no longer move, as he was attacked with a paralytic poison. The monster had already grabbed him. He was very angry at his powerlessness, because Yvonne could be in danger. But the next moment, the girl screamed for him to let go of her brother and threw something at him. The next moment, the monster collapsed to the floor. At this time, blood dripped onto the glass ball in which they were watching the monster and what was happening around. It was the same prince's girl who was now standing helplessly over the ball with blood flowing from her nose. Her contract with the monster was broken, and in return her life was shortened. The bracelet somehow killed the monster. She couldn't understand how this happened, because the monster she sent to Barden was a top-level monster. The girl began to suspect that the main character knew what was happening, so she showed up on time. On the other hand, in her opinion, it would be impossible, since she did not plan to attack Barden, she was only going to follow him. She wanted to check if his sister had found out anything, because something clearly did not add up here. When the father saw the monster, he said that this monster belonged to the dark magician without any doubt. His son told him that last night this monster appeared in his bathroom. He assumed that it had already followed him when he went to war to write a report. Father said that only a powerful dark magician could make a contract with such a monster, putting his lifespan as collateral, and he was so daring that he dared to send his monster to the duchy. Dark magicians were those who made contracts with hellish demons. They summoned monsters to cause war. The strongest of them could make contracts with monsters and control them, so they were even more dangerous. In the Empire, those who were associated with dark magic were severely punished, and the Empire also controlled all information related to it. Therefore, it was difficult to imagine that a dark magician was freely roaming around in the capital of such a state. She didn't know whether she should ask the Duke about this, since he was the owner of the magic tower. The Duke himself said that they had little information at the moment, so it was difficult to say anything about it. My brother said that apart from participating in the war, he had not been involved in anything special. The heroine suggested that the reason why Barden might have become the target of a dark mage is because in the novel, Yvonne herself became a dark archmage. But to avoid this fate, she did everything to stop being a villain. She even began to think that the desire to become an archmage was not her own desire. At this point, the father asked Yvonne how she killed him, because the monster had thick scales, even powerful magic or sword technique did not work. Meanwhile, the brother brought the crumpled bracelet to his father's face and said that she had killed the monster with it. Father couldn't believe how she killed the monster with this bracelet. She said there was nothing suitable around, so she had to throw the bracelet, and her father asked why she didn't use magic. Yvonne herself was confusedly thinking that maybe she should confess everything to him. These thoughts gave her hope that she should tell everything, and then her father himself would resolve this situation. The girl couldn't bring herself to tell them about it. But the guy stood up for his sister and said that in that situation she couldn't use magic, otherwise she would have hurt him too. He explained that his sister's decision was the best one. The heroine thought that her brother realized that she could not use magic and tried to cover for her. It even touched her. Lately he tried to please her, which was awkward. Her father said that she defeated the monster with physical strength alone, and in this she was similar to her mother Camilla. Camilla was an excellent knight and also very strong. At a hunting tournament she caught a brown bear with her bare hands, after which her father fell in love with her. He said that he would try to find out what the matter was anyway. Suddenly, the heroine's brother said that the Duke was hanging around Yvonne and not leaving her alone. He said that the Duke was courting her so much that rumors of their meeting reached the Imperial Palace and the Academy. He assumed that the Duke of Yales was kind to everyone, and he was worried that he might mislead Yvonne and hurt her feelings. While the girl was trying to say that this was not the case at all, everyone around her misunderstood. The father shouted that if he flirted again, the brother would have to tell him right away to talk to him. Suddenly, the trio were informed that a guest had arrived to see the lady. When the door opened, the prince's girl stood on the threshold. The heroine was now sitting directly opposite her. She was so sweet like the spring sun. Just one look at her made me stop calmly. The heroine only thought that she didn't want to meet her. She didn't understand why she came to her because there was no such scene in the plot. The girl thanked the heroine for accepting her despite the strange visit. The heroine still could not understand why she had come. I had to be nice to her, so that she would stop being so wary of her. Tears appeared in the girl's eyes, and she asked the heroine if she thought she could win the prince's heart. The first purpose of Cordelia's visit today was to check what this miss knew about her. The second goal was to get rid of Barden's bracelet. And the third goal is to make sure that she can no longer interfere with her plans. Cordelia explained that Miss had recently been on a date with the Duke of Yales. The heroine said that she had forgotten the prince a long time ago. The girl asked if the heroine was deliberately catching the prince's eye. She said that they were on a date in Naziel, which is near the Imperial Palace, and they started these rumors. She said that this method was commonly used in high society. She thought that the heroine was using Duke Yales to make the prince interested in her. The naive princess was consumed with jealousy and came to her rival. This was an excellent excuse. At this time, the Duke clearly could not remain on the sidelines, but his brother held him back. He knew that as Yvonne's father, he could not sit back and watch this conversation. At this time, the prince was thinking about the letters that had arrived from the most famous and influential dukes in the empire. The third prince's name was Felix, and he was sorry that he could not meet anyone. He approached his mother with care, as she was digging in the ground. It was 18 years ago that Empress Giselle lost 2 children. She adopted the concubine's son, the fourth prince Hadrian, and proclaimed him crown prince. The third prince Felix, the son of the concubine Evelyn, an intelligent and capable man. No one understood why the empress decided to make a 4-year-old boy the heir. Then, this part of the aristocracy, which supported the third prince, began to express its dissatisfaction. One day a boy came to the palace and was told that he looked weak. His Majesty told him that it would be all right if he sometimes behaved like a child and was a little capricious. One of the doctors told the child that this was a very valuable medicine and should not be given to anyone. Even though he was young, he understood what kind of potion it was, so he couldn't stop thinking about it for several days, but he had no other choice. He knew that if he was gone, his mother would be able to live in peace. But this bottle contained only water, and his mother suffered. Fortunately, she was saved, but the poison greatly affected her mental state. The woman just said that she really liked these flowers, and Felix liked them too. This life was given to him, thanks to the sacrifice of his mother. He immediately remembered everything, how they told him that it was okay if he sometimes behaved like a child. He could no longer allow himself to be seen by her. The queen told him to go to the doctors and get some medicine from them. Meanwhile, the duke realized that the third prince's answer about his state of health was clearly an excuse. It seems he was afraid of catching the empress's eye once again. While the father was walking and thinking that he was being too irresponsible about everything, he did not notice how he crashed into the back of one of the young men. The young man immediately apologized for blocking his way. It turned out to be the same duke who went on a date with our heroine. The father thought he had made a mistake when he arranged a date with his daughter. The guy admitted that he was there to see if there was a teacher for a newbie like him. Father didn't understand why he needed this if he was already a master of the sword. The young man replied that after his arrival in the capital he saw many magical objects that make life easier, and most importantly, there were monsters that could only be defeated with the help of magic. He said that then the changes could have affected the entire genus of dace, which guard the northern lands. The heroine's father was shocked that in a family that sacredly believed in the power of the sword, there was such a wise young man with deep thoughts. The guy admitted that since he once helped his late father, he always treated him with great respect and gratitude. The heroine's father noticed how modest this guy was. The duke also said that the father had raised such a beautiful daughter well. He thought that in addition to his trained body and pleasant character, he also understood people. Perhaps he was much better than he thought. The duke said that he could not then understand the reason why the prince had caused the girl such pain. The father flared up and said that he wanted to tell a lot about him. He said that everyone revered him as a war hero, and that was why he acted so arrogantly. He felt so relieved, he didn't expect that they would be able to find a common language so quickly. Eventually, the father invited the duke to dinner at his estate. At this time, the heroine thought that something was clearly happening here. The heroine asked if this was all the girl wanted to talk about or not. The girl thought that judging by this strange manner of speech, it felt as if she was interrogating her. And she thought that perhaps the heroine was much more dangerous than she thought. She shouted that the girl still didn't seem to understand the full extent of the situation. The girl let slip that she was that very villain who was ready to do anything to get the prince. She sincerely did not understand why they all had to suffer because of one villain. The girl asked the heroine to answer directly, unless she was one of those who liked a tarnished reputation. She thought that if she added fuel to the fire to anger the villain and make her go crazy, she would destroy herself. As a punisher, she always did this, destroying what was in her way, burning and breaking it so that it would go away on its own. She was going to make her out to be a criminal who had twice tried to kill the future wife of the crown prince. But instead, the heroine picked a cherry from the cake and put it in her mouth, regretting the rumors that were going around. She put her fork on the table and said that the most important thing was that the prince had such a lovely bride. The heroine said that if there were any problems, she would be better off talking about it with the prince personally. She explained that one should not involve strangers in one's affairs. At that moment, the brother came in and said that he accidentally overheard their conversation while passing by. The girl could not understand how he himself treated the heroine as if she did not exist, and now he pretended to be a caring brother. She had no choice but to retreat and come up with another plan to harm her. The girl explained that she was ashamed of her behavior, she could not control her emotions and allowed herself to go too far. She said that the real reason was that she was embarrassed by the gift from the prince. The girl explained that this gift was not intended for her. She said she would no longer make excuses for her behavior, but wanted them to know that she had no ill intentions towards them. After Cordelia left, the brother turned to his sister and asked how she could stand it with her character. But the girl said that it was only because he was standing behind the door. In fact, the heroine was very glad that Barden was standing behind the door all this time. Even she was angry. She wondered how the real Yvonne would feel if something like this happened. The brother told his sister not to dare open this box and gave it to him to throw away on the way. Before leaving, her brother told her to throw it out herself if she wanted to see it. The heroine did not understand what could make Cordelia so angry. At this time, Cordelia turned to the creature in the carriage. At that moment, some kind of clot of dark energy was transformed. It turned out to be a creature summoned by Cordelia. He explained that he had found the bracelet and asked whether to destroy it now or not. The girl thought that everything was resolved with the bracelet. Now all that was left was to deal with the lady. She heard how much she had changed, but she thought it was all a trick. The prince once gave orders that she should be watched. People didn't change that quickly, but today the lady she met didn't look like the villain Yvonne. She was not at all moved by the gift that the prince supposedly sent. She thought that she was using the source of the sun. It is a means to lift the spirits of stupid aristocrats. It was added to bathwater to make the skin more radiant. If used continuously, it can actually cause an unpleasant-looking skin disease. Cordelia was the only one who knew how to cure this disease, meaning that only she could become their savior. The little animal asked if she wanted to help her. He admitted that before leaving the room, dark magic also emanated from her. Now Cordelia finally realized that the heroine is also a dark magician. She told the creature to return to the estate and finish its business, just so it wouldn't be noticed. Now it seemed she had found a way out. All she had to do was accuse her of using dark magic, and the rest would be left to the imperial palace. And it would not have been difficult for her to obtain evidence. She really wanted to marry the prince, even if she had to remove those who were in the way. At this time, the Duke was arriving for dinner at Yvonne's father's. He wondered if he would be able to see her today. At that moment, the window opened and the girl leaned out and threw something straight at the Duke. It was an earring that was now flying straight at him. The next moment, there was a huge explosion. Some time ago, the heroine was holding a bottle in her hands and reading a letter from the prince. It looked quite expensive and she thought it would be better to throw it away. At that moment, a maid looked into the room and said that a message had just arrived from Ferret that they could start making cosmetics from grass. The heroine said that this was great news, and now it remained to decide what kind of products they would produce. The letter said that this bottle of bath products, which is currently popular among aristocrats, is a great example of a product that will be in demand in the summer. The girl decided that they would now make bath products. Carol suddenly wondered if that thing in her hands was by any chance the source of the sun. The maid explained that this was the very product that made the skin feel like silk. It was sold for a lot of money, and the heroine asked for what price exactly. The maid remembered that for one bottle, as far as she remembered, approximately 10 million gold pieces were spent. The girl thought she almost threw away 10 million. The maid also kept repeating that it was impossible not to fall in love with such an ideal lady. Suddenly, she saw something glitter on Carol's earrings. As soon as she saw the unpleasant shine of the earrings, she immediately rushed to her maid. A familiar feeling of madness suddenly came over her. After that, she rushed straight to the window. In that short moment, she acted on the assumption that there was no one in the garden and threw the earrings straight out the window. But there was the Duke standing below with a bouquet. Then she realized that she was wrong. She screamed his name out the window, but the Duke remained safe and sound with a sword. The heroine was incredibly happy that he was alive. She didn't even know what to tell him now. The girl ran up to her maid and asked about her health, but she said that she was fine. The room, however, was in complete chaos and disarray from the explosion. The girl said that she urgently needed to leave because the explosion had affected the Duke of Yale's. She told the maid not to worry about it, since it was she who gave her the bomb. At this time, quite a lot of people had gathered in the hall who did not understand what was happening. Nobody understood what was happening, and the lady herself came out to them at that moment. She thought that everything was already destroyed, but everything looked whole. One of the knights ran up to her and said that despite the loudness of the bomb explosion, there was not much damage. Duke Yells appeared just in time and used his aura to absorb the blast wave. The knights screamed that they would certainly find the criminal. At that moment, everyone surrounded the Duke and asked about his health. The girl still hadn't decided what to tell him, but she was already approaching him. To Yvonne, he now seemed like the most perfect man. Everyone was whispering that they were very compatible with each other. She could not see his gaze in turn and asked if he was hurt. The guy admitted that he didn't expect this. He was going to give her this bouquet, but while he was getting the sword out, it turned into coals. She didn't understand why he wanted to give her roses. She smiled and asked if she could take the bouquet, since he had brought it for her and she just needed something to decorate the room. She also asked him for what purpose he had come to the estate. The guy said that her father invited him and she said that he arrived quite early. At that moment, the chief of the guard approached the heroine. He explained that an unknown bomb had exploded in front of the estate and asked if she knew anything about it. He said that apart from Duke Yells, who was at the scene, there were no other witnesses. The girl looked straight into the Duke's eyes and asked why he said he knew nothing. But the guy just looked away and said that she also didn't know who it could be. He told the guard that he would pass on the information to him if he remembered anything. Then the Duke turned to the heroine and asked her to accompany him. She didn't understand why he didn't blame her for all these things. She led him into her private living room and the guy looked around. He noticed that the glass was broken. Apparently the shock wave was too strong. She didn't notice the commotion, no matter how strong it was, and it was unclear why neither her hair nor her clothes were damaged. She also said she was very glad the Duke was not hurt. She apologized to him and thanked him for not giving her away. The heroine told how the artifact broke and she spontaneously threw it outside. He asked her again if she meant that her bomb was about to explode, so she threw it out the window. Then he asked her why she didn't use protective magic, and the girl was shocked by this. She didn't know what to answer him, but then the guy asked the most unexpected question. He asked if she had thrown the bomb at him on purpose. If she had told him about her illness, she might have been able to convince him, but the problem was that rumors could have spread about it, and then everyone who was against Yvonne would have tried to harm her. If she doesn't answer, she will become a criminal who tried to harm with magic again. Then, neither her father, nor her brother, nor the others will be able to trust her anymore. He assumed she was trying to test him. When the Duke realized that he had a more than ordinary interest in Yvonne, he wanted to become the most important fish in her aquarium. However, he spent almost his entire life in the Duchy of Yales and knew nothing about her. A desire arose in him to fill these gaps in their relationship, so he began to search for any information about the lady. The more he got to know her, the more he saw behind such eccentric behavior an attempt to express his sympathy for one person. That man was Prince Hadrian. What was it about him that could make Yvonne want his love so much? And when the Duke saw the light of the exploding bomb, he felt confusion, and at the same time, joy. Perhaps it was the chance Yvonne gave him. He knew that the prince was a master swordsman like him. The Duke said that whatever the reason, he was not going to blame her. The girl said that it seemed he had misunderstood everything. Now she thought that he thought she was testing him, but he was acting too calmly. The Duke admitted that he thought she wanted to test his abilities. In his opinion, the situation was just similar. The girl realized he was referring to the explosion in Natsiel when she threw a bomb at Cordelia. In her opinion, the Duke could also understand who she was. Perhaps he thought that she had set up a similar situation and specifically wanted to check whether he was really secretly sent to the princes or not. But still, his calm attitude indicated that she could not escape responsibility or hide from him, no matter what she did. She asked him again if he was sure he didn't blame her for anything. Yet she asked him to forgive her and admitted that she was just testing him. She also asked him not to tell anything to him, to that which will never come. The Duke was upset and could not understand why she suddenly started talking about the prince. The girl thought that the Duke did not like this, because it was his duty to report everything to the prince. She asked for forgiveness and said that she had said too much. He sat down next to her and said that he would not tell anything, not only to the prince, but to anyone else. With these words, he placed the earring in her palm. He explained that he didn't want to see her in this state. The girl did not understand how he was ready to do this, even at the expense of his duties. And the guy explained that this only concerns the two of them, and others don't need to know about it. The girl realized that this incident had nothing to do with his investigation. The heroine thanked him. It was good for her that the Duke was so kind. He told her that he would deal with the chief of the guard himself. He showed her the communication artifact he used in the Duchy of Yales. He said he would assume that the artifact exploded for some unknown reason. The girl thought that such care indicated that she was special to him. The guy tried to calm her down, saying that it shouldn't bother her so much. But if she was so worried, he offered to fulfill one of his requests. At this time, the brother was returning to the estate, and the knight told him that there had been an explosion. He recounted how the Duke had said that the explosion was due to a problem with his artifact, and that the investigation would be completed. He explained that everything happened because of the artifact in the connection of Duke Yales. The knight explained how he used aura and softened the explosion without receiving a single scratch. Hearing that the Duke had gone for a walk with his sister, the brother rushed into the garden. Meanwhile, the Duke told the heroine that he had told the chief of the guard to stop searching. The girl thanked him and said that she was ready to fulfill any of his requests. But he said that she didn't know what he was going to ask for. She laughed and said that if he asked her for 20 million, she would hardly be able to fulfill it. But the guy only touched her hair and tucked it behind her ear. He asked her to call him Rod, and she sheepishly agreed. She didn't think he was interested in her and didn't understand what his goals were. At this time, the out-of-breath brother ran to the garden. He said that he came running as soon as he heard the news. He asked if he could speak to the Duke alone. When they were alone, the brother said that he had made it clear last time that he should not go near his sister. The Duke said that he fully understood his brother's feelings. He grabbed him by the shoulders and asked him to teach him new knowledge in the future. The Duke said that after hearing such reviews about his brother, he was convinced that he had found the man he needed. Already at the table, the heroine did not understand how these two suddenly became friends. The Duke said that he was calm, because the capital was guarded by such outstanding personalities as the Duke and his son. The maids were crying at this time, because for the first time since the death of the Duchess, they had dined together in such a pleasant atmosphere. At this time, the heroine thought that if the Duke were her suitor, he would pay more attention to her. At this time, the Duke communicated only with his father and Barden. The heroine was very beautiful today in her signature black dress. After the Duke had complimented her on her dress, he said nothing more to her. She noticed how her father and brother were clearly drunk and she couldn't stand it any longer. She got up from the table and headed outside to sit on a bench. At that moment, one of the maids approached her. The girl realized that she sometimes went with Carol. The maid came to her mistress with a request. Her hands were shaking, and she seemed to be very afraid of Yvonne. After this, the girl fell to her knees in front of her. She asked to sell her the sun source because her sister had been suffering from a skin disease for a long time. Recently, the maid learned that the heroine was given a source of the sun. If the lady did not intend to use it, the maid would ask her to sell it to her. The maid thought that she had crossed all boundaries and did not understand what would happen to her now. The girl said that she understood her, but she had no intention of selling her the sun source. However, she leaned over the maid, wiped away her tears, and asked her to bring her sister to her. She didn't think there was a similar product, so her business could have failed. But if the source of the sun could heal various skin diseases, then why wasn't it mentioned in the book? 10 years ago, the Viscount's daughter took lessons to become an heir, but the right to inherit the title passed to her cousin, and the Viscount's daughters ended up on the street. It was just the family of the servant. Now the three of them lived outside the city with their mother. The girl said that there was one matter in which her sister could help. She said that this way she could get a source of the sun, but she would like to discuss the details with her personally. After this, the maid ran away, and the girl realized that if this was not in the book, then she would have to find out everything herself. After the girl left, the brother told the Duke something that he had told him during the day. He said that he agreed to be his teacher. He only demanded that the Duke not do anything that might hurt his sister. The brother himself twirled the wine in his hand and asked if the Duke knew why the girl liked the prince so much. It's just that when they ran into each other, he apologized and looked like such a clear and pure person. There might have been other reasons that he didn't know about, but what was certain was that his sister could fall in love very easily. He asked the Duke if he had any intentions regarding his sister. The guy advised him not to give any hope to the heroine, although Yvonne was not the least bit interested in him. When the Duke asked why her brother thought so, he said that she wanted to grind the gift he gave her into powder and drink it. After dinner, the Duke thought she liked that bracelet. He sat helplessly on the street now and did not understand what was in her heart. If you remember, Yvonne always behaved very carefully in front of him, her gestures and facial expressions. It seemed to the guy that he was a burden to her. When the Duke returned to the house, he told his servant that he had decided to study magic, but the minister said that using magic was against the clan's rules. The Duke then said that he was now the head of the clan, and such things could change depending on the era they lived in. After the stick fight, he said that he could only control aura now, but if he had any other choice, the difference would be huge. The servant, meanwhile, was indignant at how his master had changed so quickly, since he had never been interested in young ladies. He even believed that Miss could have cast a bewitching spell on him. The Duke was surprised. Did his servant really think that he could not distinguish magic from real feelings? And he explained that there were simply rumors that Miss Yvonne used him to attract the prince's attention. And then the Duke understood everything. Could it be that he, too, had fallen into her love trap?